me go across to our special guest, Brigadier Dr. VS Dheman, defense expert, joining us on this broadcast. Brigadier Dheman, thank you so much for taking the time out. First of all, if we talk about the latest developments, the situation continues to be very, very fluid. A lot of claims and counterclaims are being made by Ukraine as well as Russia as far as ground situation in Ukraine is concerned. Do you think it is time for everybody to should just, wait for a bit to gauge what is really happening on ground?
You see that whatever you're saying is absolutely right. But let me tell you, if you study the sequence of events, so whatever's unfolding, this was expected. Now see what has Russia done? Problem is Ukraine. Ukraine was the wheat bowl of erstwhile USSR. Also, the highest number of nuclear weapons were in Ukraine once the 91 that fragmentation took place. So it was a threat for Russia even then. And then EU as well as the NATO, they were eyeing this country along with Belarus and even Kazakhstan, which you said certain events happened earlier. The aim was to have an expansion of NATO eastwards toward Russia to threaten its security. And Russia would not let that happen. And Putin, who has been a KGB agent for almost 15, 20 years, understands this game very well. Today's diplomacy boils down to only two things. One is your economics, and for economics, you need to protect yourself. So economics and security are the gains. And that is what Putin has planned. Of course, he wasn't very sure that Americans will not attack. Americans are doing everything. They put the deployments in Baltic states. They've done deployments in Poland, and they've even given weapons, javelin missiles, even trainers to train the Ukraine army, but they have not put their boots on ground, and never will they. And as regards EU or the other NATO countries, France is clearly shying away from it, calling for diplomacy. Germany wasn't very sure till yesterday. About the Nord Stream 2, it's only yesterday they've given a partial halt. So there is a total flux which Putin is exploiting. Now also, he has just said he's given recognition to the Donbass, those Lugansk and Donetsk states, and then put the peacekeepers, his army into as peacekeepers. And then from the latest reports also say that their Belarus army is also, along with Russian army, has invaded from the north. So they are doing selective entrance because Russia definitely knows that he cannot hold Ukraine. They can defeat Ukraine, but it'll be impossible to hold it because there'll be insurgency and other issues coming up at international level. So they are doing bit by bit. And what comes to my mind is they will have fragmentation of Ukraine into certain countries which will be part of Russia, certain regions part of Russia, certain regions independent, and certain probably will remain Ukraine, where Ukraine will have not much of a voice of its own, not much of a character of its own. So that kind of a probably ultimate objective Putin may be looking for. And he's very sure the Americans cannot afford body bags in their domestic this thing. So this is how probably the things will roll out in a couple of days' time.
Right. Also, Brigadier Dheman, coming back to the ground situation, initial reports that we got suggested that Russia's offensive initially was limited to eastern Ukraine, which was kind of understandable because two regions are pretty much in Russia's control. But it is a matter of concern how quickly matter escalated in the capital of Ukraine, that is Kyiv. Was it something expected?
No, you see, this is what probably happened in 1971 war also between India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. So this is a pressure tactics, gunboat diplomacy that you try to hit the capital selectively so that the world opinion doesn't go against you. And yet you put some kind of a threat into the mind of the very leadership in Ukraine. So that could be one of the tactics. But I'm sure there'll be no mass attacks on capital Kyiv in foreseeable future.
Right. Also, while we are seeing that several Ukraine cities are reporting massive explosions, including the capital Kyiv, Putin and Russia both are maintaining that it is not a bid to occupy Ukraine. It is just a special military operations. Do you believe these claims of Russia?
That is what I'm trying to say. Russia has no choice. Russia knows very well, even if it captures the whole of Ukraine, it cannot hold it for various reasons. So probably the objective now is do selective operations bit by bit in favor of the insurgents in Ukraine, backed by Russia, and get those republics either independent or make them join Russia. so that the overall impact, overall character of Ukraine as a country diminishes and maybe EU or NATO lose interest in them. And at the same time, the strategic security autonomy which Russia wants to maintain with the NATOs, like one of the clear demands of Russia is there should be a buffer between EU countries and Russia. So there should be demilitarization, no efforts of NATO over there, which is not acceptable to US, all right. But then this is what is the objective. So to achieve that objective, to my mind, they would go in for a fragmentation of Ukraine bit by bit, few independent, few part of Russia, and few might remain with Ukraine, which will not have any positive character to be of any use to in any kind of a diplomacy or any security environment.
Right, staying with the global response that you mentioned, Brigadier, UNSC, if we talk about it specifically, they have discussed Ukraine 4 times in 3 weeks, and yet see what is happening on ground at this point in time. Is it of any kind of use? Even today, there is a meeting that is scheduled.
You see, UNSC is a defunct body as of today. Let's be very clear. I'm making a bold statement. Whatever they do is of no use to anybody because of those veto power status. And here, at least 3 veto powers, or 4 rather, or 5, all are involved here. Now, what is you just see Russian President's statement today morning, before he said that we're going to enter Ukraine. He quoted a provision of UN Security Council, the chapter, and he says those countries like Donetsk and Luhansk have asked for a help. So we are moving in to help them. We are not doing any aggression. So Putin is playing his cards, his diplomacy in a very, very deliberate manner, in a step-by-step manner, and is taking all the things. Of course, there'll be, there'll be chaos over it. Whole world will cry foul. But nevertheless, he has his own grounds and he's holding on to it. That tomorrow, if something happens, people blame Putin. He can say, I went by the rules of UN Security Council. So that is where we are. So there is a case of, expansion of UN Security Council and removal of these veto powers for a better world order.